I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are locked in a sealed, fortified titanium room.
Right.
But you aren't trapped with, an external monster. Nothing with claws or teeth or heavy armor.
No giant alien beasts.
Exactly. You are trapped with a microscopic organism that is actively mining your subconscious. It's searching for your deepest, darkest, most debilitating childhood trauma just so it can weaponize it against you.
It's terrifying.
It really is. The question isn't whether you have enough ammo to shoot the monster. The question is, how long could you trust your own eyes? Or even the person standing right next to you?
Yeah, that is the core of it.
Welcome to a brand new deep dive.
It's just a deeply unsettling premise because, well, it completely bypasses every physical and tactical defense we've spent centuries perfecting.
Right.
Today, we are opening up a classified post-action military report. The file is simply titled Hell Can Wait. Docs.
What a title.
Yeah, it sets the tone, and it contains the declassified logs, the telemetry data, and the psychological evaluation of Flight Manifest 404B.
So the mission for today's deep dive is to unpack what I can only really describe as a horrifying masterclass in psychological warfare and alien evolution.
Absolutely.
We are looking at a nameless moon that uses its victims' own minds as the primary mechanism of execution.
It's brilliant and horrible.
We're going to trace the complete systemic breakdown of elite tactical training. We're talking about 15 young cadets, top of their class, and they're stranded on this hostile world.
And we really need to start right at the beginning of this document with the initial breach.
Let's set the scene. So it's hour 1. These cadets are inside a state-of-the-art spacecraft called the Trailblazer.
A literal fortress.
Right. They are gathered in the central mess hall. They've got clean uniforms, heavy armor, military-grade atmospheric scrubbers. I mean, on paper, they should be completely safe.
Yeah, according to the ship's analog logs, they had every reason to believe they were totally secure.
But they weren't.
No, because the initial threat on this moon, it doesn't announce itself by, tearing off the airlock doors. The document refers to it as the violet breath.
Violet breath.
Yeah. It's a microscopic airborne spore.
Okay, so it's a gas.
Basically. The after-action report notes that Cadet Sana Amin, she was the ship's communications and systems specialist. She was the first to realize that the ship's multi-billion-dollar filtration system was failing.
Which is wild for a ship like that.
Totally. The military-grade HEPA filters, they were actually just recycling the spore. It was just too small to be caught in the containment mesh.
So it's just pumping right back into the room.
Exactly. It's passing right through the vents, right through their skin, and directly into their bloodstreams.
Okay, let me stop you right there, because I was reading through the medical logs from Dr. Emily Rowe. She's the ship's acting chief medical officer, and this is where the biology starts to sound impossible.
Oh, the biomimicry is insane.
Yeah, so Cadet Captain Kira Black asks if the gas is toxic, and Rowe checks out Isaac Miller, the weapons specialist. Now, Miller is described as this huge, burly guy, but he's blinking rapidly, tracking something invisible on the ceiling.
He's already hallucinating.
Right. But Dr. Rowe says physiologically, they're perfectly healthy.
Yeah.
There's absolutely zero cellular damage, no respiratory distress, no immune response. I mean, how does a foreign spore bypass the blood-brain barrier without triggering some kind of, massive immune reaction?
Well, the clinical notes suggest an extraordinary level of evolutionary biomimicry.
Okay.
The spore isn't acting like a pathogen. It's acting like a native neurotransmitter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it basically coats itself in a lipid layer that the human body recognizes as its own.
So the body just lets it right in.
Opens the front door for it.
Yeah.
And once it crosses the blood-brain barrier, it doesn't attack the organs. It acts as this highly specific neurochemical key, and it slots directly into the amygdala.
Which is the brain's fear center.
Exactly.
Huh.
From an evolutionary biology standpoint, this moon has developed an incredibly efficient, low-risk predatory mechanism. I mean, think about standard apex predators on Earth.
Like a lion or a bear.
Right. A lion expends a massive amount of caloric energy to chase, subdue, and kill its prey.
And it could get hurt doing it.
Exactly. It risks getting kicked, gored, starved.
There's a physical cost to hunting.
But this ecosystem sidesteps the physical cost entirely. By unlocking the prey's own nervous system, the moon forces the prey to do the heavy lifting. It makes the victims subdue themselves.
And it does it with terrifying precision. I mean, going back to Miller in the mess hall, he suddenly shrinks into himself.
This huge guy.
Yeah. The document describes him looking like a terrified toddler. He's muttering about a spider with human teeth clicking at him from the dark corner of the starboard corridor.
That visual is just, ugh.
It's awful. And Erin O'Connor, the security specialist, she immediately snaps at him. She tries to use logic. She says there are no spiders in deep space, that he's just hallucinating.
Which is a totally rational response.
Right, but the telemetry logs lay out what the commanding officers eventually called the rules of the moon.
Which is really a diagnostic progression of this neurochemical invasion. The document breaks it down into 3 escalating phases.
Let's go through them.
So the first phase is the baseline. The logs indicate that if a cadet relies on objective reality, if they realize the horror isn't physically possible, and they consciously ignore it, the hallucination will temporarily fade.
So the brain kind of asserts dominance over the spore.
Exactly.
For a little bit.
But that only works for a couple of hours, right?
Mhm.
Because they are constantly breathing this stuff in.
Yeah, the saturation just keeps going up.
Which leads to the second phase, the escalation. This is where the sensory data in the report gets completely wild. The illusions stop being mere visual ghosts.
They get upgrades.
Yeah. As the concentration of the violet breath increases in their bloodstream, the hallucinations gain sound. They gain distinct smells. And most dangerously, they gain tactile weight.
And that tactile integration leads directly to the third phase, which the document calls it the trap.
The trap.
Yeah, and this is the most malicious part of the whole evolutionary design. The more a cadet pushes through a nightmare, the harder the spore pushes back.
It scales with them. It does. The moon essentially forces the host's brain to manufacture a monster so terrifyingly precise and so physically imposing that the conscious mind eventually just shatters.
And we see the physical toll of this almost immediately with the ship's quartermaster, Chloe Bell.
Oh, Chloe, yeah.
She's only 19 years old. The logs show her standing under the flickering emergency lights, and she's looking down at her pristine white uniform.
Just a completely clean uniform.
Right. But she begins to hallucinate that the fabric is dissolving, like it's turning into a damp, moldy, black watt, and she thinks it's creeping up her collar toward her throat.
And to everyone else in the room, they just see her staring at clean fabric.
Exactly. But Chloe starts clawing at her neck. She's trying to scrape the phantom mold away.
She's frantic.
The medical report notes she scratched herself so violently she lacerated her own jugular vein.
It's a localized, inescapable physical loop. I mean, the cognitive dissonance there is staggering. Her eyes are telling her one thing, the pain receptors are telling her another, and her logical brain is just completely sidelined.
It really reminds me of a hyper-advanced, malicious algorithm.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right, like a targeted ad campaign that has unrestricted access to your search history, your private messages, your biometrics, but instead of selling you shoes, it's feeding you your deepest anxieties in real time, just to maximize psychological engagement.
That's a highly accurate way to frame it.
Yeah.
An algorithm maximizes engagement by leveraging emotional spikes: anger, outrage, fear. This biological algorithm maximizes consumption by feeding you whatever breaks your psychological resistance fastest.
But I have to wonder, how does a puddle of mist on a nameless moon know to show Chloe Bell black rot? Or Isaac Miller, a human-toothed spider?
How does it know their secrets?
Yeah. Does the spore, read their memories like a flash drive?
Well, the neurological breakdown in Dr. Rowe's notes suggests it's not reading a linear narrative. It's tracing synaptic pathways.
What does that mean exactly?
So it floods the brain and looks for the paths of highest electrical resistance, basically the scars of old trauma.
Oh.
Yeah. When it finds a cluster of neurons associated with extreme distress, it artificially stimulates them. It forces the brain to project that internal trauma outward into the physical environment.
And that brings us to the architecture of that trauma, which is detailed so extensively in the psychological profiles attached to the main document.
They really dug into these cadets' backgrounds.
They did. And there are 2 cadets highlighted to show exactly how this mechanism operates in the field: Zane Khan and Marcus Gallo. Let's start with Zane.
Zane's story is rough.
His profile is a masterclass in the heavy expectations of military legacy. So the records point back to 2088 on Earth at a settlement called Blackwood Ridge. Zane is 10 years old.
Just a kid.
And his father is Colonel Rian Khan. He's a legendary veteran of the orbital border wars.
Right. And the psychiatric evaluation for Zane notes that his father viewed fear as a structural flaw.
Like a defect.
Exactly. A weakness that needed to be aggressively trained out of a soldier. So to cure his 10-year-old son of being soft, the colonel takes Zane into an unmanaged, highly dangerous pine forest for a hunting trip.
And the sensory notes here are crucial for what happens later on the ship. Zane hates every single second of this trip. The suffocating smell of gun oil, the oppressive silence of the woods, the heavy metallic weight of the rifle in his tiny hands.
It's sensory overload for a 10-year-old.
And then it all goes terribly wrong. A rogue automated logging drone stumbles into their grid.
These things are massive.
The report describes it as this huge, rusted machine. Its sensory arrays are completely glitched, so it can no longer read organic life signatures.
It doesn't see humans, it just sees wood to chop.
Yes, it just sees them as obstructive debris. The drone's hydraulic claws pin Zane's father beneath a fallen timber, and the rotating saw blades are spinning, producing this high-pitched metallic shriek.
And the psychological crux of this drama isn't just the fear of a big scary machine. It's the demand for absolute precision under chaotic conditions.
Because his dad is trapped.
Right. Zane's father is trapped, his own weapon is jammed, and he screams at his young son to shoot the drone's optical lens to disengage it.
That 10-year-old kid.
Yeah. And Zane freezes. I mean, the sensory overload, the mechanical scream, the smell of pulverized pine, the leaking amber diesel, his father's raw panic, it completely paralyzes him.
He just can't move.
When he finally forces himself to pull the trigger, his hands are shaking so violently that the round ricochets off the thick chassis. He misses.
Oh, no.
The drone advances and shears through his father's left leg.
So his father survives, but the psychological mutilation Zane endures is permanent.
Absolutely.
The psychiatric notes state that for Zane, horror isn't a monster under the bed. Horror is the sudden failure of geometry and logic.
It's the breakdown of order.
It's the suffocating guilt of freezing when perfection was the only acceptable outcome. He spent the next 12 years turning himself into this rigid, tactical perfectionist just to ensure he never froze again.
And that rigid perfectionism is exactly the pressure point the moon targets.
Okay, let's look at how that plays out. We're looking at the bridge telemetry logs from Hour 3. Zane is manning the tactical console.
Right.
To the rest of the crew, the bridge is perfectly quiet. The violet fog is pooling around their ankles, sure, but it's quiet.
But not for Zane.
No. For Zane, the acoustic environment begins to warp. The smooth electronic rhythm of the ship's cooling fans starts shifting pitch.
It degrades into that jagged, uneven whine of a rusted logging blade hitting a high RPM spin.
The subjective reality described in his debrief is just terrifying. Zane is looking at the clean, blue, holographic map of the planetary grid on his screen, but the digital lines start breaking apart.
They lose their geometry.
They reform into the sharp, towering silhouettes of the pine trees from Blackwood Ridge. And when Cadet Captain Black places her hand on his shoulder to check on him, Zane doesn't feel a gloved human hand.
Tactile hallucination.
Right. He feels a cold, heavy, metallic clamp pinning him down. Even the digital text on his console begins to liquefy, bleeding down the screen like amber diesel fuel.
We are seeing the escalation phase perfectly executed here.
It's hitting every sense.
Yeah, the spore is seamlessly blending auditory, tactile, and olfactory hallucinations. I mean, the bridge is climate controlled at 72 degrees, but Zane reports his skin going ice cold. He smells wet earth, burning oil, and raw pine sap.
And then the visual manifestation solidifies completely.
Right in front of him.
Through the main viewport, where he should see the distant stars, he sees a massive, rusted hydraulic claw lowering from the ceiling of the bridge. The gears are grinding.
And Captain Black is standing right next to him. She's telling him to trust the telemetry data, to look at the numbers.
But Zane can't trust the numbers, because the auditory hallucinations escalate. The hum of the console turns into his father's voice screaming, "Take the shot, Zane! You're freezing again!"
It's using his deepest shame.
The document notes Zane's hand hovered over his sidearm. His fingers were slick with phantom sweat.
Which is a highly dangerous situation.
So dangerous. Because if he draws his weapon to shoot this hallucination, he risks discharging a firearm on a crowded bridge and hitting Captain Black.
But if he doesn't shoot...
His brain is convinced this rusted machine is going to tear him apart. The moon found the perfectionist who cannot handle chaos, and it is just drowning him in it.
Yet Zane manages to hold on.
He does.
The logs show a massive spike in his heart rate, but he forces his hand away from his weapon. He actually lies to Captain Black, claiming it was just a transient dizzy spell.
He won't admit he's cracking.
Exactly. He buries the terror because to admit his mind is fracturing would be admitting he is flawed, which violates his entire core coping mechanism.
Which really proves he has incredible willpower.
Right.
But I have to ask, does that willpower actually save him, or does it just force the moon to pivot?
It definitely forces the moon to pivot. The spore's algorithm registers that Zane's psychological armor is still holding, so it redirects its primary assault.
It looks for an easier mark.
Right. It pivots toward a softer, more vulnerable target on the ship. And that brings us to Marcus Gallo.
Marcus. Okay, so Marcus is the ship's systems tech. He's described as cynical, fast-talking, always deflecting with humor.
The class clown, sorta.
Right. And his trauma profile is wildly different from Zane's. It goes back to 2090 on Earth at the Grimaldi estate in New Monaco. Marcus is 6 years old, attending this massive birthday gala.
And he wanders off.
He wanders away from his parents and gets lost inside a sprawling mirror maze. And while he's in there, he is stalked by a 19th century revivalist performer named Giggles the Jester.
And the psychological notes on this encounter are just pure nightmare fuel.
They really are.
This isn't a cartoon clown. It's a performer wearing thick white grease paint that is dried and cracked like mud.
Ugh.
The clown has a surgically enhanced grin, body modification that pulled the lips back so far the gums permanently bleed.
Why would anyone hire that for a kid's party?
Right, and for 30 minutes, this figure silently shadows a 6-year-old Marcus through the glass labyrinth. It never speaks. It just presses itself against the glass.
Everywhere Marcus turns, he sees a fractured reflection and hears the wet, rhythmic squeak, squeak, squeak of oversized rubber shoes echoing through the maze.
When estate security finally found Marcus, he was completely catatonic. He developed profound coulrophobia, an extreme fear of clowns, and a deep-seated terror of warped reality.
Which he masked with bitter sarcasm as he grew up.
Exactly.
So fast forward to hour 4 on the Trailblazer. Marcus is down in the secondary maintenance hub with another cadet, Thomas Reed. They are trying to reroute power to the primary engines.
And the mist is really thick down there.
The violet mist is pooling at their waists. Marcus hears the ship's coolant pipes expanding. It's a normal metallic ping, but the sound morphs. It becomes rhythmic, wet, and rubbery. Squeak, squeak, squeak.
According to the audio surveillance logs from the hub, Marcus stops working. He turns around. The smooth chrome wall of the hub is no longer flat.
It's warping.
Yeah, the spore has manipulated his visual cortex to make the wall act like a funhouse mirror. His reflection is stretched and distorted, and standing right behind his reflection in the metal is a towering figure in a polka dot silk jumpsuit.
Oh, man.
He spins around, but there's nothing behind him in the physical room. Just Reed, with his back turned, soldering some wires.
But then the fog physically parts, and an oversized red leather shoe steps out of the mist.
The tactile and visual data is just overwhelming his brain.
The hallucination is hyper-detailed. Marcus sees the grease paint peeling off the clown's face in strips, revealing raw red musculature underneath. The surgically enhanced grin splits completely open, revealing rows of razor-sharp silver teeth.
And Marcus panics.
He starts screaming at Reed that they need to evacuate the room immediately, but when Reed answers, his voice doesn't belong to him.
This is where it breaks him.
To Marcus, the clown's jaw unhinges and Reed's voice tears out of the monster's throat. It says, "Let's see what's inside you, Marcus. Let's cut you open."
Horrifying.
And the clown's fingers elongate into foot-long, rusted sewing needles, and it lunges at him.
And this is the fatal breaking point. The sheer terror completely overrides Marcus's elite academy training. He doesn't see his fellow cadet holding a soldering iron.
He sees the monster.
He sees his childhood nightmare coming to flay him alive. The physical response is automatic. Marcus draws his standard issue sidearm and fires 3 rounds blindly into the dark.
The audio logs record the 3 gunshots, and the illusion shatters instantly. The spore drops the simulation the second the damage is done.
Because it got what it wanted.
There are no funhouse mirrors. There is no clown. Thomas Reed is slumped against the electrical junction box, looking down at 2 smoking holes in his white uniform.
He shot his friend.
Reed manages to ask, "Marcus, what did you?" before his forehead hits the metal deck with a thud. He's dead.
The psychological fallout recorded in the aftermath is immense. Captain Black and security specialist O'Connor rush to the hub. They find Marcus sitting cross-legged in his friend's blood.
Just totally gone.
Completely disconnected from reality. He's tracing frantic circles on his uniform and whispering about the clown with the needles. They are forced to drag him to the brig and lock him in a titanium solitary cell.
Okay, let me challenge the core premise of the academy training here, because the document keeps referring to these kids as elite cadets.
Right, top of the line.
But if your own brain is forced to manufacture your destruction, does tactical training even matter? I mean, how can a soldier, no matter how elite, fight an enemy that wears their own history? You can't put Kevlar on your subconscious.
You've hit on the exact reason why the moon's evolutionary strategy is so devastating.
It just bypasses everything.
Yeah. Tactical training relies entirely on a shared objective reality. A squad needs to agree on threat identification, firing lanes, and unit cohesion. If I say enemy at 12 o'clock, you need to see the same enemy.
Right.
The violet breath destroys objective reality. It isolates each soldier in a subjective hell. Once unit cohesion is broken by an incident of friendly fire, profound paranoia takes over the entire group.
And the paranoia described in the Central Command Theater is just suffocating. Isaac Miller is slamming his fist on the tactical table. He points out a terrifying logic.
Which is?
If the spores can turn Marcus Gallo, a guy they've trained with for years, into a killer in a matter of seconds, how do they know the person sitting next to them won't see a monster and put a bullet in their skull?
You literally can't trust anyone.
So O'Connor establishes a frantic perimeter. No one moves alone, no one carries live ammo except the security detail, but they are trapped. The engineering log shows that Alex Chen, the backup tech, estimates it will take at least 12 hours to patch the hyperdrive.
Because Reed was the only one who had the secondary plasma flow matrix memorized. And Marcus killed him.
Exactly.
And 12 hours is a death sentence when you are trapped in a sealed tube breathing in a hallucinogen. The intelligence behind the moon, sensing that the psychological pressure has successfully fractured the group's trust, realizes it's time to change tactics.
It pivots again.
It escalates from localized individual hallucinations to a massive ship-wide deception.
Which brings us to hour 6, and what the report calls the ultimate deception.
This part is wild.
The cadets are locked down in command. Suddenly, the crisp blue lights of the theater die. A low mechanical click echoes through the ventilation shafts, and the overhead light bars flicker back to life. But they are casting a thick, sickly green hue.
Everything looks poisoned.
And a level 4 biohazard alarm begins to blare over the ship's PA system.
The environmental alerts on the main console declare a multi-stage system failure.
Okay.
The digital readouts claim that the extraterrestrial particulate is highly acidic to synthetic materials and has compromised the internal titanium filtration mesh. Cadet Amine reports that the main scrubbing filters just dissolved into slag.
And under this sickly green light, the violet fog, which had been passively rolling across the floor, starts to act as if it has a mind of its own.
It gets aggressive.
It defies gravity. It crawls up the bulkheads, wrapping around the tactical consoles like vines. The document notes that the psychological assault reaches a crescendo right here.
They're turning up the dial on everyone.
They are pumping the nightmare directly into the cadets' faces. Zane's ears are ringing with the sound of the rusted logging blade. Chloe is screaming as she watches the phantom black rot consume her fingers.
And then the ship's AI delivers the critical warning.
The big one.
The acidic reaction has breached the primary reactor core. Total ship self-destruct is imminent in exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
So, Cadet Captain Black makes the only call a commanding officer can make in that scenario. She orders an immediate evacuation of the vessel.
They have to run.
They grab whatever survival packs they can carry, sprint past the brig, and they throw Marcus a set of keys through the bars as a final act of mercy, and they flee through the primary airlock.
Out into the unknown.
They spill out onto the surface of the alien moon, and the visual contrast is jarring, because outside it looks shockingly beautifully peaceful.
Oh, the camouflage is so good.
Rolling hills, a twilight sky, lush, silver blue moss glowing softly in the dark.
Cadet Park spots a structure nestled in a nearby valley. To their eyes, it looks like an old, automated human colony outpost.
Which seems like a godsend.
It looks like a massive 3-story industrial warehouse made of rusted iron and corrugated steel with glowing yellow windows. Black orders the squad to double-time it to the warehouse so they can barricade themselves inside before the ship's reactor detonates.
But here is where the document drops a monumental twist. The external telemetry cameras on their suits record them running away. But as they look back, the Trailblazer is sitting silent and dark.
There was no breach.
There was no reactor breach. There was no countdown. Floating just above the ship's hull are the true masters of this moon. 4-foot-tall liquid mercury entities.
These are the apex predators.
Okay, let's talk about them.
The biological notes describe them as impossibly slender, shifting and sliding like living liquid metal. They lack the physical musculature to crush a human skull or tear off an airlock door.
So they aren't physically strong?
Not at all. But their telepathic capabilities are vast, cold, and profoundly cruel. The violet fog isn't just a spore. It is the extended aerosolized nervous system of these creatures.
That is insane.
The self-destruct sequence wasn't real.
Wait. I need to stop you because I'm looking at the engineering specs of the Trailblazer. It's a military vessel with a closed-loop encrypted AI.
Yep.
Are you telling me a puddle of alien mercury somehow wrote code to bypass a military-grade firewall and trigger a fake countdown? I mean, I struggle to buy that.
It's a completely fair point to push back on. And the after-action report specifically addresses this. It wasn't a digital hack in the traditional sense of writing code.
Okay, then what was it?
The report calls it analog hallucination via electromagnetic field manipulation.
Analog hallucination.
The entities didn't rewrite the AI. They used their telepathic frequency to generate intense, localized electromagnetic interference that bombarded the ship's sensors.
Oh.
They tricked the ship's analog thermometers into reading a reactor spike, which caused the AI to automatically trigger the alarm. It was a brute force sensory trick applied to the ship's hardware.
That is deeply unsettling. But even so, I have to question Cadet Captain Black's judgment here. Even under the extreme duress of an alarm, wouldn't elite academy graduates manually verify the core temperature analog gauges before abandoning a fortified titanium bunker for an unknown alien wilderness?
You'd think so.
It just seems like a massive amateur tactical error.
Well, in a sterile combat simulator on Earth, absolutely. You verify the telemetry, but you have to factor in the neurochemical degradation.
They've been breathing this stuff for hours.
Right. Their amygdalas have been artificially redlined for 6 uninterrupted hours. The spores have completely dismantled their capacity for higher-order sequential logic.
The logic centers are just offline.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational decision-making, was essentially suffocated by the fear response. The entities couldn't break the cadets physically while they were behind titanium, so they weaponized the ship's own failsafes to flush the prey out into the open.
It's an evolutionary strategy of displacement.
Precisely.
The implication is just terrifying. There is no safe harbor when the very instruments you use to measure reality, the readouts, the alarms, the screens, can be manipulated by the enemy.
You're completely naked.
So the cadets sprint toward this 3-story industrial warehouse, throwing themselves through a massive rolling bay door and slamming the heavy iron bolts into place. Chloe collapses, sobbing that they're finally safe.
But safety is just another illusion. As their tactical flashlights cut through the darkness of the interior, the spatial geometry of the building aggressively warps.
The architectural horror of this moment is incredible. From the outside, the cadets clearly saw a 3-story building with stairs, catwalks, and yellow windows.
But as the flashlight beams sweep the interior, there are no stairs.
Nothing.
There are no upper floors. There are no windows. The interior is just 4 monolithic concrete walls stretching up 30 feet to a flat, featureless steel ceiling.
Zane Khan runs his hand along the wall and whispers that it's not a building, it's a box.
The trap is officially sprung. The sweet, cloying scent of the violet fog begins to seep through the microscopic seams in the concrete. And those 4-foot-tall, liquid mercury entities slide silently down from the shadows of the high ceiling.
Like spiders.
Yeah, clinging to the flat walls like pale, elongated spiders. As they look down at the trapped soldiers, the moon's defense mechanism enters its apex phase. They aren't just implanting nightmares from afar anymore.
They are physically becoming them.
In the flickering flashlight beams, the creatures' liquid bodies expand. They begin to mimic the exact geometries of the cadets' traumas.
The shape-shifting is so fast.
One melts and stretches into a towering, rusted logging drone, its mercury arms sharpening into hydraulic claws right in front of Zane. Another collapses into a heap, reforming as a mass of polka dot silk with a white grease paint smile, pivoting dead blue eyes toward Chloe.
The 13 cadets are standing in an empty concrete box, completely surrounded by a shifting circle of their own solid, hungry nightmares.
Captain Black tries to reassert command. She screams for them to form a defensive ring, shoulder to shoulder. But the telepathic distortion is so heavy that her voice sounds like her dead mother's, mocking her failures.
It's just sensory sabotage everywhere.
The tactical bond shatters completely. Mateo Rios looks down and feels the solid concrete floor liquefy into a dark pool of engine oil, dragging his mind back to the ship engine room where his father died.
And one of the mimics completes its transformation into a jagged, bone-white medical droid with vibrating surgical saws. It lunges directly at Miller.
And that physical threat finally breaks their paralysis.
The team opens fire. The enclosed concrete box becomes a deafening echo chamber of kinetic rounds and plasma bolts, but the weapons are
Not
useless.
completely.
The bullets just ping off the entities, passing right through the shifting liquid fog of their bodies.
Meanwhile, back on the Trailblazer, the intense electromagnetic warping of the ship's geometry actually buckles the titanium frame of the brig.
Where Marcus is.
The lock shears off. Marcus Gallo stumbles out into the empty corridor. His catatonic chant about the clown is gone.
Replaced by what?
It's been replaced by the crushing, undeniable reality that he just murdered Thomas Reed. He picks up a discarded rifle and marches out the airlock toward the sound of gunfire in the distance, fully expecting to die.
Inside the warehouse, the air is pulsing with the low, rhythmic thrumming of the moon's heartbeat. And as the first cadet is suddenly pulled upward into the dark ceiling by a coil of liquid silver, the survivors realize a horrific truth.
They really do.
They didn't escape the Trailblazer to save their lives. They escaped because the moon prefers its meat terrified and far away from cold steel technology.
Yes.
Which brings us to a crucial question that the document addresses in detail: the calculus of consumption. How exactly do these entities feed? If they aren't tearing these kids apart for meat, what are they taking?
Well, the xenobiological analysis in the file is very clear. These entities possess no digestive tract for organic matter.
No stomach.
Right. They have no hunger for the coarseness of flesh or the warmth of blood. They are obligate psychic parasites.
Okay.
They sustain themselves on the electrical death rattles of failing memories, the intense chemical frenzy of absolute panic, and the suffocating weight of childhood grief.
Let's break down exactly how that feeding process works, because the document outlines the customized deaths of 3 specific cadets during the retreat from the warehouse.
It's brutal.
The tactic the aliens use is called blind flank separation.
Right. It's a method of isolating prey without using physical force. The entities use the fog to mathematically slice the group apart, exploiting split-second gaps in the cadets' visual fields. Reality simply takes a quiet, fatal detour for the victims.
The first to fall is Ji-hoon Park, the 21-year-old communication specialist. His psychological profile notes his ultimate fear is the static void.
The absolute loss of sensory input and total isolation.
Right, so as the remaining squad is sprinting through a narrow, rocky defile outside the warehouse, a gust of wind blows through the canyon. To the rest of the squad, Park is right there in the middle of the formation.
But to Park,
His teammates' flashlights suddenly blink out. The ambient noise of their heavy boots and ragged breathing vanishes into a pressurized, deafening silence.
terrified of being left behind in the dark, Park lunges forward to grab Cadet Rios' shoulder for physical grounding. But his hand sinks into a cold, gelatinous mass.
Oh, God.
An entity had seamlessly stepped into the formation, physically mimicking his teammate's silhouette. As Park touches it, the entity elongates, its silver mercury flesh wrapping tightly around Park's head.
So it smothers him.
Not physically. It doesn't suffocate him. It uses a specific telepathic frequency to permanently scramble his auditory and visual cortex.
It essentially blinds and deafens him neurologically. As his mind folds into a screaming state of total sensory deprivation, the creature drinks the raw electrical terror of his isolation. The external telemetry shows Park's body wandering off the path and dropping into a bottomless thermal fissure.
And he's clawing at his perfectly functional but utterly blind eyes.
It is a horrifyingly clinical execution.
It really is. And the second targeted death is 19-year-old quartermaster Chloe Bell.
The one with the uniform hallucination.
Right. We know her fear is being consumed or rotting from the inside out, tied to that phantom black rot she saw in her hands.
So how do they use that?
As she runs through the moss, she looks down. The hallucination returns, but it's escalated. She sees the veins in her forearms split open, and hundreds of bioluminescent centipedes pour out of her flesh.
I can't even imagine.
They're crawling rapidly up her arms toward her face. She reaches out in blind panic to grab Isaac Miller's heavy tactical vest for stability, but when Miller turns around, it's not him.
The entity has assumed Miller's massive, bulky frame, but instead of Miller's face, it's a hollow, gaping mouth lined with chitinous insectoid legs.
Yeah.
It grabs her wrists with impossible force. And here's where the psychic manipulation proves so brutally effective. The alien doesn't use real teeth.
Doesn't need to.
It projects a localized tactile illusion so intense that Chloe's brain genuinely believes her flesh is being dissolved by acid and devoured by a swarm of insects.
The medical telemetry recorded from her suit is astounding. The phantom agony triggers a catastrophic shock to her central nervous system.
She just
She
overloads.
dies of a massive instant heart attack caused entirely by pure, unadulterated terror. There isn't a single scratch on her physical body.
And the entity just stands over her corpse, absorbing those final, frantic memories of being consumed, and slowly reshapes its own liquid limbs to match her petite human geometry.
It's chilling.
It's like an emotional vampire taken to an extreme evolutionary endpoint. They aren't just feeding on these cadets, they are downloading the software of human trauma to upgrade their own hardware.
That's a great way to put it.
And that brings us to the third casualty of this retreat, Dr. Emily Rowe, the acting chief medical officer. She's a woman of cold, hard science.
But even she has a breaking point.
Her deepest hidden terror, according to her psyche evol, is autoscopy.
The fear that she lacks a soul. That she is just a biological machine destined to be dismantled and discarded.
And autoscopy isn't just a philosophical fear, it's a known neurological condition where a person hallucinates seeing their own body from the outside, right?
Exactly. The entity hacks the temporoparietal junction of Rose's brain, forcing a severe dissociative split. Near a cave entrance, she blinks, and her surroundings vanish.
She's suddenly standing in her own sterile medical bay back on the ship.
And lying on the operating table is her own body, autopsied and completely hollowed out.
And standing over the table is a perfect silver clone of herself. It's holding a scalpel, smiling with cold, robotic detachment. The entity whispers directly into her mind, "Let's see if there's anything human inside you, Emily."
That is just so cruel.
The phantom clone drives its fingers directly into the real Rose's chest. Again, there's no physical wound. But the telepathic fingers clamp onto her central nervous system, forcing her brain to simulate the exact physical sensation of having her ribs cracked open with a retractor and her heart manually stopped by a cold hand.
She dies of existential dread, collapsing against the cave wall.
From an evolutionary standpoint, the benefit of this is immense.
Huge.
Yeah.
By assuming the victim's trauma, the entities map the psychological vulnerabilities of entire species.
But despite their clinical control, the entities possess one massive fatal blind spot, which becomes apparent when the survivors retreat deep into an obsidian cave system.
This is where things finally start to shift.
Let's talk about that cave and what the report calls the distraction grove and the armor of guilt. The remaining 10 cadets scramble into a pitch-black cave. They turn to brace for a siege, but the tunnel is empty, just swirling violet fog.
Then, from the deep darkness of the cavern, they hear the rhythmic click of heavy military boots. And a voice calls out, hollow, slightly distorted, but unmistakably belonging to Dr. Emily Rowe.
The voice echoes off the walls, claiming she found a secondary exit and that Cadet Belle is injured and needs help.
But Captain Black feels the hair on her neck prickle. Underneath the familiarity of Rose's cadence, there is a subtle metallic trill.
Glitch.
Yeah, the document describes it as a sound like tectonic plates grinding over glass. This is the bait.
And while the auditory bait is set, the environmental trap is sprung. The cave walls begin to bleed a thick bioluminescent nectar. It's a hallucinogenic pheromone, and the smell is what gets them.
The olfactory manipulation.
It smells like rain on hot asphalt. It smells like home things that absolutely should not exist on an obsidian moon.
The neurobiology of this tactic is brilliant. The olfactory bulb in the human brain is located right next to the amygdala and the hippocampus. Smell is the fastest trigger for deep emotional memory.
I always hear that smell is tied to memory.
It is. The entities use this olfactory illusion to tether the cadets' minds to a past they can never reclaim, flooding them with homesickness to dull their tactical reflexes.
And while they are distracted by the smell of asphalt and the metallic trill of the Rowe entity, the true physical threats are waiting above them. The apex predators of the canopy.
These are real physical beasts.
These are heavy, armored carapaces resembling jagged stalactites clinging to the ceiling. A drop of their acidic saliva hits O'Connor's shoulder, burning through her armor, and the creatures drop with silent, terminal velocity.
The squad is forced to retreat deeper into the primary bottleneck of the cave.
Inside that bottleneck, the psychic pressure reaches a terminal density. The smell of asphalt shifts. It becomes the smell of sterile antiseptic mixed with copper and sulfur.
Miller drops his weapon and starts screaming that the Rowe thing is whispering his dead mother's final prayers directly into his brain.
Mateo Rios falls to his knees because the floor feels like it's tilting into a vertical abyss.
The entities are actively weaponizing the cadets' vestibular systems. They are locking their muscles in a titanic embrace of pure, unadulterated horror. They're completely paralyzed.
They can see the silhouette of Roe rounding the bend, its jaw unhinging to reveal silver filaments tasting the air, and they can't even lift their rifles to fire.
Like then, the turning point arrives.
Marcus Gallo finally catches up to the group and bursts into the cavern. Remember, Marcus is not locked in a state of terror fabricated by the moon.
No, his head is in a completely different place.
Marcus is drowning in real, profound, self-inflicted guilt over murdering Thomas Reid. And here we find a fascinating psychological paradox. Why doesn't the entity just feed on Marcus's guilt?
Because fear and guilt operate on entirely different neurological frequencies. Fear is anticipatory. It's an anxiety about a future threat.
Right.
The entities are tuned to consume that forward-looking panic. But guilt is retrospective. It is a backward-looking, self-inflicted psychic weight.
It's already happened.
Exactly. It acts as static. Marcus's guilt creates a jagged, impenetrable frequency of white noise that the entity's sweet, manipulative telepathic probes simply cannot decode.
It's like he's wearing jagged psychic armor. Marcus walks into the cavern, sees his squad mates locked in paralysis, and he doesn't hesitate. He raises his kinetic sidearm and fires a deafening volley of rounds directly into the obsidian cave wall.
Just raw noise.
The concussive blast in the enclosed space causes the Roe entity to recoil in a violent spasm, unleashing an invisible psychic shockwave that throws Marcus against the wall, but the spell is broken.
The paralysis drops. Miller and O'Connor instantly open fire, their muzzles flashing as they spray the cavern with heavy lead.
Captain Black drags Miller backward toward the exit, ordering O'Connor to pop a smoke grenade to cover their retreat.
As they fall back, Black locks eyes with Marcus for a fraction of a second. It's a silent acknowledgement of the massive debt they owe him.
Marcus hurls a high-yield concussion grenade at the thrashing entity and yells for the squad to move.
It is a profound, tragic irony. The worst thing Marcus ever did, killing his teammate during a hallucination, ended up being the exact psychological shield needed to break the alien paralysis and save the rest of the crew.
But the reprieve is incredibly short-lived. Deep within the subterranean dark, past the smoke, they hear a wet, rattling wheeze.
The tunnel branches out into a dozen perfectly rounded subterranean corridors. They haven't found a sanctuary. They've stumbled into a hive.
At the intersection of three massive tunnels, the flashlights illuminate a creature. It's hairless, the size of a house cat, with pale violet skin shimmering in the light.
It looks fragile.
It lets out an innocent, trilling chirp. Mateo Rios lowers his rifle, his instinct to protect kicking in, suggesting it's just a cub.
The Captain Black and O'Connor immediately realize the horrific tactical implication.
If that's the cub, where is the mother?
The answer is a deafening, high-pitched screech that tears through the tunnels so loud it drops the cadets to their knees, clutching their helmets.
From a massive fissure in the ceiling emerges a 15-foot-long monolithic horror. It is completely hairless, with translucent violet skin that shows its pulsing internal organs.
It has no eyes, just a gaping maw of needle-like teeth with massive, leathery folds of skin stretched between its limbs.
It lunges with terrifying speed, bypassing the squad and landing squarely on Marcus Gallo's back.
The physical weight and momentum of the matriarch snaps Marcus's spine instantly.
Oh, man.
But the audio logs note something incredible. Marcus doesn't scream in terror. With a final desperate surge of adrenaline, he shoves his kinetic rifle deep into the creature's massive tooth-lined maw and pulls the trigger.
He just unloads it.
The predator rears up in agonizing physical pain, releasing its pinning weight just long enough for O'Connor to drag Sana Amin toward the faint light of the exit. Marcus sacrifices himself, buying the exact seconds needed for the others to escape the cave.
Driven out of the cave by the thrashing matriarch, the 9 remaining cadets spill out into the suffocating, ink-black night of the moon's surface. Black orders them to stay pressed against the obsidian ridge to maintain a tight defensive formation.
But the psychological toll is too high.
Sofia Valdez panics. She feels something cold drop on her neck. It's actually just loose, damp flora falling from the cliff, but her poisoned mind translates it into her worst nightmare.
She breaks formation.
She sprints blindly out into the open, silver-blue moss.
From the pitch-black mouth of the cave, the matriarch emerges. It doesn't run. It launches itself from the lip of the cavern, spreading those massive folds of extra skin, and glides through the heavy alien air like a silent phantom.
It intercepts Sophia in mid-stride, crushing her into the moss.
The wet, tearing sounds captured by the external mics are a brutal reminder of the physical stakes of this world. The matriarch slowly retreats back into the cave with its prey, leaving 6 cadets shivering against the rock face.
Mateo Rios is hyperventilating. He points out the obvious. The smell of fresh blood is going to draw everything down on them.
Captain Black realizes that raw panic is going to kill them all. She needs logic. She needs geometry to ground them.
She realizes their weapon systems are completely self-contained and not tied to the ship's compromised AI. She orders the squad to activate the digital night vision on their primary scopes, specifically the passive infrared thermal optics.
And what they see through those lenses changes the entire understanding of this planet.
The pitch black ink of the night is instantly replaced by a high-contrast, glowing green and white thermal landscape, and the environment is revealed to be a hyperdense predatory matrix.
Just 50 yards ahead, they see the 4-foot-tall shapeshifters waiting for them. But through the thermal optics, the shifters are terrifyingly distinct.
They are absolute sucking voids of black.
Their mercury bodies absorb ambient energy rather than radiating heat. They appear as invisible holes in the glowing forest, waiting patiently.
And as they pan their scopes, the true horror of the ecosystem is unveiled. They see the stalkers. Heavy-set eyeless quadrupeds with thick armor-plated spines slithering through the glowing underbrush.
They spot the arid leeches, thick, worm-like organisms pulsing with intense heat, hanging from the lower branches like vines.
And the canopy threats. Massive, bat-like creatures with pterodactyl beaks and leathery wings, glowing hot white as they roost in the tall trees.
The biological realization hits them. Every single organism on this moon is a carnivore.
There are no herbivores.
Ecologically, it suggests a world entirely driven by hyper-aggressive evolutionary arms races. An ecosystem where deception is the primary mode of survival because every creature is both an apex predator and potential prey.
Zane Khan looks through his scope and notes the tactical formation of the wildlife. The shapeshifters are hurting the cadets.
They're letting the local physical wildlife do the messy work of cutting them down, while the telepaths wait safely on the perimeter to harvest the psychic energy of their dying memories.
Black calls for a mandatory ammo check. The report labels this section the Ledger of Survival, and the map is just bleak. Captain Black has one full standard cell for her plasma carbine and one flashbang.
Rios has one magazine of 24 rounds for his kinetic rifle.
Miller has one low-yield magazine for his heavy repeater and 2 frag grenades. O'Connor has 8 shells in her security shotgun. Zane has 20 rounds in his tactical rifle. And Sana Amin only has 12 plasma bolts for her sidearm.
As O'Connor bluntly states in the recording, they have exactly 1 engagement's worth of firepower left.
That's it.
If they get into a prolonged firefight with the stalkers, they run completely dry in less than 90 seconds. Furthermore, firing Rios' unsuppressed kinetic rifle would act as an acoustic dinner bell for every predator in a 5-mile radius.
Black makes the only tactical choice available. She orders them to move forward in absolute silence, navigating the narrow gaps between the predator's thermal signatures.
They step into the pitch-black hunting grounds. The tension described here is unbearable. The forest floor is littered with calcified spore pods that look like glowing ribs. Stepping on one would release a cloud of luminescent dust and mark their position instantly.
At one point, the logs note a stalker growled so close to Sana Min that she could see the thermal heat radiating from its unhinged jaw through her scope.
She froze mid-step, her boot hovering inches over a spore pod for 10 heart-stopping seconds until the creature finally slithered away into the brush.
The thermal optics are successfully guiding them through the immediate physical threats, but the lenses are entirely blind to the moon's most treacherous evolutionary trait: aesthetic deception.
Which brings us to the glowing tendrils.
The squad pushes into a sprawling clearing where the absolute dark is replaced by a soft, shimmering radiance. Thousands of delicate, translucent tendrils cascade from the canopy above, pulsing with a serene, hypnotic turquoise and gold rhythm.
To minds that have been starved for peace and exhausted from 11 hours of pure terror, this glowing flora acts like a visual narcotic. It offers a false, overwhelming sense of sanctuary.
Sana Amin, the youngest remaining cadet, lets her guard slip. Exhaustion overrides her training. She drifts away from the tight formation, her trembling fingers reaching out to brush against the glowing, silk-like fibers.
The environmental retaliation is instantaneous. Those innocent glowing branches are actually the high-voltage sensory nerves of a subterranean ambush predator, essentially a macroevolutionary Venus flytrap.
The moment she touches it, four massive tentacles studded with calcified, hook-like thorns burst from the earth, pinning Sana's arms to her sides.
The soft moss of the canopy floor splits wide open, revealing 20 feet of pulsing purple hide and a massive cavity lined with bone-yellow teeth.
Sana fights with the sheer desperation of the dying. She manages to unsheath her titanium combat knife and hacks wildly into a tentacle, hot, acidic sap spraying across her visor. But for every coil she manages to sever, three more lunge from the loose soil, snaking tightly around her throat and wrists.
The leathery lobes of the massive trap snap shut with a sickening thud, and she is dragged down into the lightless subterranean root system.
The sheer hopelessness of this moment is staggering. The beautiful tendrils above ground just resume their gentle, innocent pulse as if nothing happened.
That sudden, violent loss shatters the remaining cadets. They are down to 5: Black, Rios, Miller, O'Connor, and Kahn. That is a 33% survival rate from the original 15 who boarded the ship.
Mateo Rios drops his rifle into the mud and sinks to his knees, stating flatly that they are already dead. Zane Khan, the analytical perfectionist, agrees with him. He states the math doesn't lie. No ship, no ammo, zero chance of extraction.
And just beyond the tree line, the shapeshifters glide into view, waiting patiently to drink their final, crushing despair.
Which brings up a question I've been thinking about this whole time. When the tactical math unequivocally tells you that you have a 0% chance of survival, what is the mechanism in the human brain that keeps you putting one foot in front of the other? Why not just lie down and surrender?
Because at hour 11, at the absolute edge of despair, Cadet Captain Kira Black finds that mechanism, and it initiates the most brutal phase of the report, the adrenaline counteroffensive.
Black refuses to accept the math. She lunges at Rios, grabbing his armor and violently dragging him to his feet. The audio logs capture her snarling at them, asking if they are really going to rot in the mud and let these mercury-skinned bastards take them without a single drop of alien blood spilled.
She orders them to drop their empty, useless rifles. She draws her standard-issue 9-inch titanium combat knife, stating simply, "Knives don't run out of bullets."
Miller hesitates, looking at the towering darkness of the woods, but Black challenges all of them. She points out a crucial weakness. She says the pale ones rely entirely on the collapse of the mind to do the heavy lifting, but physically. Beneath the illusions, they are fragile.
She quotes her father, Colonel Khan. "It's not the dark you should fear. The dark should fear you."
And she tells her cadets that they are the monsters in the dark now. The cadets erupt. They don't just find courage, they find brutal animalistic rage. They draw their blades and charge screaming into the alien line.
This is the critical turning point of the entire ordeal, and it exposes the massive evolutionary flaw of the alien entities. I want to emphasize the biology here. The aliens map the brain for fear and grief. But human adrenaline and raw, unbridled rage act as a toxic backflow into their telepathic network.
Let me push back on that. If these entities are apex psychic predators that have spent millennia perfecting the consumption of human emotion, why wouldn't they just evolve to consume rage too? Feels a little too convenient that getting angry suddenly crashes their system.
It's a great question, but look at the ecosystem we just described. Every organism on this moon relies on stealth, ambush, and intimidation. It's an ecosystem built entirely on the dynamics of sudden terror and immediate submission.
Right, there are no prey animals on this moon that turn around and fight back.
Exactly. The shapeshifter's entire evolutionary tree is specialized to process the frequency of fear. Rage operates on a completely different neurochemical bandwidth. It's a chaotic primal energy. When the cadets project pure rage, it literally poisons the alien's telepathic receptors. The network seizes and stutters under the incompatible data load.
It's like a computer virus. The entities tried to download a specific file submission in fear, but the cadets forcefully uploaded a corrupt, unreadable script of pure aggression that crashed the alien's operating system.
Precisely. The shapeshifters try to frantically manufacture a defensive nightmare to stop the charge. A towering, rusted logging drone materializes out of the fog right in front of Zane.
But Zane doesn't falter this time. He sprints right through the phantom drone, the illusion instantly dissolving the moment he aggressively refuses to believe in it. He bursts through the fog, grabs the entity hiding behind the haze by its cold mercury neck, and drives his titanium knife upward, straight through its jaw.
The physical squelch of the combat detailed in the report is so jarring compared to the psychological cat-and-mouse warfare the first 10 hours. Zane's blade meets wet, grinding resistance. His hands are slick with hot, silver alien blood that smells sharply of ozone.
The entity unleashes a deafening metallic shriek as Zane mercilessly twists the blade. To his left, the massive Isaac Miller uses his raw physical strength to pin a shifting creature against a petrified tree, while O'Connor brings her heavy combat blade down in a brutal sweeping arc, severing the alien's central core.
Rios intercepts an entity that is trying to flank Captain Black. He tackles it, driving his knife through its translucent ribcage, feeling the snap of crystalline structures that defy Earth biology. He wrenches the blade free and stomps the creature flat into the mud.
The moon's apex predators have never in their entire evolutionary history met a species that runs toward its own nightmares with bared steel.
Their telepathic network glitches and screams under the sudden influx of pain and casualties. The entities break formation, scrambling frantically into the underbrush to escape the 5 human predators.
The cadets literally carve a bloody titanium path through the alien blockade toward the horizon. But the adrenaline spike is unsustainable. As the rage fades, exhaustion sets in. They need a fallback position immediately.
They find a bare, elevated stone shelf beneath a sheer obsidian rock face. Zane checks his chronometer and calculates that sunrise is exactly 120 minutes away.
For 2 agonizing hours, the 5 survivors stand in a tight, outward-facing circle in total silence, knives tightly gripped in their hands.
The violet fog tries to creep back in over the shelves, whispering of clowns and dead classmates trying to find a crack in their armor. But they don't flinch. They learn to bury their fears so deep under a layer of cold hostility that no spore can dig them up.
It is a brutal internal gauntlet. They are fighting a silent war of attrition in the space between heartbeats, consciously crushing every single wave of panic before it can reach the amygdala.
And then we reach the final phase of the document. Section 8, the sunrise revelation. It's hour 12. A harsh, brilliant golden light cuts through the violet vortex of the alien sky.
The ultraviolet radiation of the local star physically burns the spores right out of the air. The heavy, oppressive scent of the fog dissipates completely.
And in that sudden clarity, a violent burst of static tears through their long-dead communication earpieces.
A heavy, authoritative voice calls for Cadet Captain Black on the secure comms channel. It's Colonel Tariq Black, Kira's father.
He explains that he tracked their anomalous telemetry bounce and mobilized Rescue Team Alpha, breaking multiple orbital protocols to do so, to save his daughter.
Kira drops her bloody knife and bursts into tears of relief, but then the colonel asks a question that stops her heart.
He asks for their exact coordinates, stating that Rescue Team Alpha has just touched down at the Trailblazer's original landing site, but the vessel is completely vacant.
Kira is deeply confused. She responds that the ship exploded hours ago after initiating an irreversible level 4 self-destruct sequence due to a reactor breach.
And the colonel delivers the final crushing twist of the report. The Trailblazer is completely intact. There was no core damage. There was no explosion. It is sitting perfectly pristine, exactly where they landed it.
The self-destruct was a complete fabricated lie. The realization hits the cadets like a physical blow to the chest. Every single death, every trauma endured in the dark, Marcus's descent into madness and his murder of Thomas Reed, the blood-soaked last stand in the concrete warehouse, it was all predicated on a phantom threat.
They bled, they murdered each other, and they died because they believed a telepathic lie whispered into their minds by the moon. It was all completely unnecessary. They could have stayed in the mess hall.
The ultimate cruelty of this ecosystem wasn't the monsters, it was the deception. The document explores Zane's intense cognitive dissonance in this moment. He is staring at the rescue shuttle descending from the sky, and he sees his father, the very source of his core childhood trauma, arriving to save him.
He is paralyzed by the horrific, creeping suspicion that this might just be the moon's ultimate, most sophisticated cruelty yet. A simulation flawlessly mimicking his father to lure him into a final, total surrender.
Kira is equally consumed by paranoia. When her father approaches in his heavy armor, she raises her weapon. She demands her father prove his identity by calling her the specific, secret nickname he used when they hiked the Valles Marineris on Mars years ago.
Only when he softly, confusedly calls her Little Crow through the external speakers does she finally lower her weapon and believe it's real.
Even then, she warns him about the telepathic neurotoxin and demands his entire team lock down their suits in full atmosphere respirators before stepping foot on the soil.
The transition onto the rescue shuttle is a jarring sensory clash. The interior of the rescue ship is a sterile, utilitarian block of harsh white light that violently slices through the muted colors of the alien atmosphere.
The rescue crew is wearing heavy helmets with opaque, mirrored visors, which only reinforces the cadets' lingering paranoia. They can't see the faces of their saviors.
When they finally walk back up the metal ramp of the Trailblazer to retrieve their fallen, the contrast is agonizing. The ship is gleaming chrome, perfectly quiet, perfectly safe, and entirely indifferent to the massive suffering that occurred outside its walls.
But the psychological aftermath detailed in the medical debriefs is permanent. Standing in the sterile, pristine medical bay of the rescue ship, the survivors realize the trauma has fundamentally rewired their neurology.
O'Connor reports to Dr. Black that she can still hear the rhythmic, heavy thrum of the moon's surface buried deep in her inner ear.
Miller stares at the clean white bulkhead and flinches, claiming he sees a ghostly silver silhouette of a shapeshifter momentarily flash across the metal.
Rios obsessively scrubs his armor because he can still smell the faint, pervasive scent of the violet fog clinging to the ship-grade ozone.
The physical escape was successful, but the biological infiltration was absolute. The moon successfully implanted its ecosystem inside their minds.
As Colonel Black walks past the dried, brown bloodstain on the deck of the maintenance hub where Thomas Reed fell, the heavy, suffocating silence among the 5 survivors speaks volumes.
They are no longer the bright, elite cadets who boarded the ship yesterday. They are iron-willed ghosts. They are forever alienated from the rest of humanity because no one else can possibly understand the subjective hell they were forced to navigate.
And as the massive engines of the Trailblazer ignite, lifting the ship off the nameless moon and leaving the nightmare behind, the report includes a final chilling detail from the external aft cameras.
Down on the landing zone, as the thrusters burn the moss away, the matriarch emerges from the tree line. It doesn't attack the ship, it just sits back on its haunches and watches the vessel leave, completely unbothered.
It proves the moon isn't defeated. The alien intelligence has simply synthesized new variables from this encounter. It learned about the crippling nature of human guilt, the exploitable power of paternal duty, and the self-destructive nature of atonement.
It's just waiting for the next ship to arrive, armed with a brand new arsenal of psychological weapons. Which makes me ask, is this actually our rescue? Physically, yes, they are off the rock. But psychologically, they are taking the environment back home to Earth with them.
They are carrying the battlefield within their own minds now. The architecture of their trauma has been permanently expanded, and the spore has mapped the human genome's emotional capacity.
So what does this all mean for us? As we wrap up this deep dive into the harrowing files of Manifest 404B, the chilling reminder is that the most dangerous, undefendable battleground is indeed the human subconscious.
The alien entities didn't defeat the elite cadets with overwhelming physical strength, advanced kinetic weaponry, or superior numbers. They simply handed the cadets the tools to destroy themselves, step back, and watch them do it.
It highlights the extreme fragility of what we consider objective reality. When our internal sensory inputs, our sight, our smell, our memories, can be hijacked and manipulated, the mind becomes the enemy's beachhead.
And when the mind falls, all the titanium armor and kinetic rifles in the universe are rendered entirely obsolete.
We want to leave you with this thought to mull over as you go about your day. If a vastly superior alien intelligence mapped your mind right now, bypassing your logic, ignoring your defenses, and going straight into your amygdala, what specific buried memory would it pull from the dark to break you?
And more importantly, if you were pushed to the absolute edge of that psychic X-ray, would you surrender to the illusion, or would you find the rage to fight back?
It's a profound question of what truly lies beneath the diagnostic muddy waters of our own minds waiting to be unearthed.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your eyes open and trust your instruments, well, mostly.